Hello! Hi, how are you? I hope you're good. Welcome to Halloween, because October. It's going to be Halloween soon, in like a week and a half, so that's cool. Anyway, today I come to you with another review, not a book review, but a short story review. Who am I? I don't know who I am anymore. This is weird. That short story that I'm going to be reviewing today is Dagon by H.P. Lovecraft, which can be found anywhere online in loads of different books, I'm guessing. I have it in my dark fantasy pirates and ghosts short stories anthology, this gorgeous book. In this book particularly, it can be found on page 362, and it is only 3.5 pages, so it's very short. I will leave a link in the description of a place where you can read it online if you have not read it and you would like to read it, because I'm going to talk about everything in the short story and spoil stuff. So though it doesn't matter, it's so short, like whatever. But before we start even talking about Dagon, I don't know how to pronounce it. I need to tell you something, and that is that this short story is the only short story I have ever read by H.P. Lovecraft. Just the one. I read this a couple years ago after I watched the film adaptation from 2001 called Dagon, and I enjoyed it. I had a fun time watching it, but it's not a good film. And after watching it and then finding out that it was a short story originally written by Lovecraft, I then went online and read it, and I really enjoyed it. It's one that I've read countless times, and I think it's really good. Though after reading that, I did over the years try to read more Lovecraft, and I have read bits and pieces of other stories, and I have to be honest, I've never have finished another short story by him. I don't know if it's that I just don't like Lovecraft or what. I don't know what it is. I cannot get into his writing style. I often find myself just getting distracted and doing other things, and whoa, the lighting, let's fix that. I don't know if that's any better. But like I said, I personally have not been able to get into any of his other stories, and so there's that. If you would like to recommend specific stories for me to perhaps try again, make an argument to me why I fail and why I should enjoy Lovecraft, you're more than welcome to do that. I will try to read more of him, but you know, I'm struggling. And in saying that, I don't know much about Lovecraft in general, so I'm going to be super smart and read you a small little biography on Lovecraft at the back of this book, because I'm such an expert. H.P. Lovecraft, master of weird fiction, was born in Providence, Rhode Island in 1890, featuring unknown extraterrestrial and otherworldly creatures, gods and beings. His stories were one of the first to mix science fiction with horror. His inspiration came predominantly from mythology, astronomy, and the supernatural and gothic writings of such authors as Edgar Allan Poe. Plagued by nightmares from an early age, he was inspired to write his dark and strange fantasy tales, and the isolation he must have experienced from suffering frequent illnesses can be felt as a prominent theme in his work. Lovecraft inspired many other authors, and his most famous story, The Call of Cthulhu, has gone on to influence many aspects of popular culture. Another thing to know is that, whoa, this lighting, my god, the sun is attacking. Is that better? I don't know if that's better. Another thing to know about Lovecraft is that he was not very well known during his time. I believe he didn't really make a living off of his writing, and he died quite young. He was around the late 40s when he passed away due to illness, and he only became well known, you know, years later after his death, which is very sad. I feel that's very prominent in the authors that I've been talking about recently. Okay, let's just start talking about the story. First, I want to share a quote from Lovecraft himself. I think it really goes well with the story, and that is, "The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown." Now, Dagon follows a unnamed narrator, a unreliable narrator, as he tells us his experience of escaping German captivity during the beginnings of World War I. He is adrift at sea by himself for days and days until he finally makes land on this strange landmass of sorts. I will read to you how he describes it. "When at last I awakened, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see, and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away." So he wakes up in this black, slimy guck. Gross. So he lays there for 3 days until this black, slimy, whatever this stuff is, dries up so that he can walk and, you know, find help. It's during this time that he's laying here for 3 days that he looks around in his surroundings and he sees all of these weird dead fish and dead creatures that he had never seen before. So creatures unknown to science, you could say. When he finally starts walking, he sees this giant mound in the distance, so he walks towards that. It takes him days to get there, but when he finally reaches the top of this area, he sees that down below there is this huge, dark, deep canyon, and I guess he just decides, well, where else am I gonna go? So he decides to explore the dark, scary canyon, because that's great. So he does that. He walks down into this canyon, and he sees this giant monolith. On the monolith is all of these carvings of different sea creatures, octopus and other crustaceans and such. But he also sees on it something that really spooks him, that freaks him the fuck out. And he sees these drawings of what he thinks is humans, but they're not really humans. They're grotesque, creepy, half human, half fish, and it really gets to him. And it's when he's seeing this that out of nowhere, this giant creature pops out and grabs hold of this monolith. And that creature is this giant, he doesn't really describe it well, but it's Dagon. He gets so scared of this giant fish dude that he runs away in terror, in laughter, in complete delirium, and then kind of blinks. And it's when he wakes up, he finds himself in San Francisco, I think in a hospital, and then he kind of remembers everything that he had just gone through. After he escaped from the creature, he was picked up by an American Navy crew. They saved him, and now he's in San Francisco, but now he is dealing with what he experienced, what he went through. And this short story, what I find so interesting, and I was gonna wait to get to this part, but this short story is a suicide note. He's telling us his experience of what he went through, and then he is planning on killing himself. The first paragraph of this shows you that. He says, "I am writing this under an impressionable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more. Penniless and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below. Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death." This whole story in general I find to be so depressing, dark, and sad, and the ending is almost comical as a switch because he writes up until he decides to kill himself. The last sentence of this: "The end is near. I hear a noise at the door, as if some immense slippery body lumbering against it. It shall not find me. God, that hand! The window! The window!" The end. That's Dagon. Okay, so why do I like this story so much? First off, like I said before, this is a suicide note. I found that to be so interesting and sad because this person experienced something that they couldn't escape that really stayed with them, and it ate at them for so long that they turned to morphine, they turned to a drug, and they couldn't deal with it any longer, so they had to end it. They had to escape what they experienced. And I think that's really interesting with Lovecraft's story, because usually with a science fiction fantasy sort of story, when you find regular people sort of exposed to the unknown, the weird, the strange, the reaction is usually different, at least what I've seen. The reaction is more of awe, wonder, interest. Whereas in this story, it's almost the complete opposite. When this character first wakes up stranded on this shore, he does not have that reaction of wonder. Instead, he says, "Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder, I was in reality more horrified than astonished, for there was in the air and in the rotting soil a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core." This character has been exposed to this weird Lovecraftian mythos, right? Because there's this huge mythos with the whatever creatures and whatnot, and this universe that's going on. I'm not as familiar with it. But he can't even begin to understand what he has been exposed to. So instead, this character has to somehow grasp it in a realistic way. He tells himself that the place that he woke up, this slime whatever, he assumes that it must be a volcano that is, you know, risen to the surface. That has to be what it is. All of these weird dead sea creatures that he has no idea what they are, that he sees around him, well, they must be, you know, just creatures that we have yet to discover, unknown to science, but, you know, that's fine, that's logical. And the giant sea creature that he sees grasp this monolith, well, that was terrifying, but you know, it has to be something justifiable. Oh, it must be the old Mesopotamian god Dagon, the fish god. That must be what it is. It's so interesting to see him try to make himself feel not crazy in this way, and instead it just eats at him so much so to where he can't take it anymore. You know, he has to escape this, and the farthest way for him, or I guess the way for him to escape this in the most distance would be, in his mind, death. So he decides to kill himself, to jump from a window. It is so sad, but I find the story to be really interesting in that way. I don't know if I made any sense in that ramble, but Dagon, I really like this story a lot. It's really good. I think it's a perfect Halloween read, and I really wanted to talk about some sort of story that had a creepy ocean element because those are my favorites. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say. Like I said before, if you have any recommendations for me to read from Lovecraft to get me to change my mind on Lovecraft, you're more than welcome to recommend those in the comments below. I hope you guys have a great day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in another video very soon.